Okay, I guess I'm ready. Don't think I'm gonna get any more ready than I am now. Hello, how's it going? I don't know how much talking I'm actually gonna do tonight because it's a little bit later and I'm very tired. We haven't had air conditioning in the building I work at for many days now. So I'm coming home pretty darn exhausted every day. Um, but yeah, I'm trying frantically to finish a commission that I started for a friend and I just have not had time to work on. So, on third model, with the exception of some last minute basing I've got to do, first model, but I want to be done sooner rather than later. So I'm going to go ahead and keep working on him, start working on him this evening. Hopefully make a sizable dent in his general look before too late. So the one I'm working on tonight is apparently called Torse. Hopefully, audio-wise, I'm loud enough and I'm coming through clear enough because I have a whole bunch of audio stuff going, and I'm not really sure if it's coming through clearly, loudly enough, etc. But this is what I've got so far. I went ahead and sprayed him down a darker black, and then kind of dry brushed him up. Oh, the Be Right Back is in the way. Give me a second. Oop. And I'm eventually going to, I'm debating whether I should keep with this and just kind of slap chop him up to a metallic sheen, or if I should go back, hit him with gunmetal to work as the darker undercoat, and then dry brush him up to like a silver. So I'm debating how I want to do this. I'm still not quite sure. If I do metallic paint, the rest of it is going to be covered up by whatever else I do. But looking back at the model, as you can kind of see over in this corner, he's definitely a lot shinier. And what's really cool is they got some neat object source lighting coming out of the little orb that he's observing. So I'm going to get to have a chance to try and dry brush some of that on there and see if I can make it look any good. So I suppose I'll see how that works. But what I really think I want to do, given how metal this guy is I think I want to go back with the gunmetal and maybe mix it with some black paint and see if that will provide me a dark shadowed enough base of metal for him that I can then dry brush over with another metallic, which should help bring out like the truly metallic aspect of this model. I debated doing non-metallic metal, but as soon as I printed him out and looked at him, I realized that was absolute insanity. So that's not going to happen. But I do think that the darker gunmetal with some black mix in it will do wonders in making sure that he has a metallic sheen, even if I put other stuff on him. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my airbrush, mix up some gunmetal with some black paint, and just spray the entire thing, and we're going to see how this is going to work out. So you might have to give me a moment as I figure all this stuff out. Okay. One moment, please. Okay, the airbrush is still clean from this morning, so let's hope and pray it turns out okay. It's quite a bit of gunmetal. We'll see how this works and hope that it works okay. Let's get some black. Mix that up. Because I really want there to be like a nice sharp contrast. The shadows on him and the highlights even darker than what we're kind of getting in the Hero Forge lighting, which looks very, very bright to me. So we'll see how this works. Given that metallic paint is literally just, metal shavings inside a medium, they shouldn't mess with the metallics too much. It'll just make it so that it's a darker complexion, because we now have this black paint sitting inside this silver medium, this gunmetal medium. And yep, I'm already looking at it. It looks like it's going to be nice and smooth. See how this goes. Now let's go ahead and minimize this guy a little bit. And let's have some fun, shall we? You can already see how I'm managing to keep kind of the darker color on him, but there's definitely now a metallic shine to him. Or maybe not, depending on how well the camera has decided to capture my hand versus him. Hit the anvil too, just for kicks and giggles. And what's going to be nice about this is that when I finish it, he's now going to have this metallic shine underneath all of the shadows and whatnot, and any other color that I decide to put on him, no matter how thin or thick I do. So hopefully this will look really good once I'm done with it. But yeah, this is definitely coming through as a much darker metal than I expected, but it's actually dark in a way that I'm going to really enjoy and appreciate once I finish getting him all kind of spiffed up for this. Because this is exactly what I was hoping for, but wasn't expecting to get. Because now, when I dry brush on the brighter metallics on him, it's going to leave these metallic shadows in the creases and in the low spots. So hopefully, this will end up looking okay. Hit that a little bit. My hand out of the way because I have a feeling you just got a good shot of my hand over and over again. Yeah, he's definitely appropriately shiny and metallic now. Okay. Unfortunately, I can't save this anymore. It's Kaputski's. It's useless. So I'll be right back. I'm going to go ahead and clean out the airbrush because now it's full of paint that I don't want to get clogged in there. So I'll be right back. Okay, that was nice and easy, so hopefully I'm done with that. Let's get rid of that, I don't need anymore. And now, I believe the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dry brush him with a much lighter silver. The color I did use for that was a mixture of Vallejo gunmetal mixed with some black paint. And I think what I want to do is, since he is an incredibly bright looking model, I'm going to go ahead and brush my way up to the silver as kind of a highlight. Let's see, his Guandao looks to be a darker one. It looks to be a much rougher, darker color, so I think I can just keep those two, the Guandao, the pickaxe, maybe even the orb, down at a level lower. So I might get that down to chainmail silver. So it looks like I'm going to use all my silvers today. That's something I don't get to do very often, so that's going to be neat. Let's go straight gunmetal, now that we've kind of got this blacker gunmetal on him. Let's mix that in here. I'm not going to need that much of that anymore, and let's get me a dry brush. I think the medium-sized dry brush will be good for this job because there's a lot of surface area to cover, and I think this thing will be small enough to hit all the spaces without being too small like this one, which I think will just not be able to get the kind of coverage we need. So go ahead and gnarl in that. Swirl it around a bit. Okay. And so you can already see how much this is brightening up the gunmetal. That's the gunmetal mixture I had on the guy, right? And that's going to kind of be the beauty of it. And so I can keep hitting certain parts of him with this non-diluted, non-mixed gunmetal, and it'll make the parts of him that I want to light up, which is exactly what I was going for. And right now, it's doing a little bit. It's not doing an incredible amount of heavy lifting, but what we're going to get to see is that as I continue putting this on layers, we're going to get to see it really get these nice subtle shifts in his color. Right now I just feel like I'm putting glitter on top of glitter. Get a little bit more. The Vallejo metal range that I decided to get for myself has been an incredibly useful tool. So hopefully it will continue to be so as I continue to use it. Now again, kind of the beauty to this all is that since I made everything so dark, as I continue brightening it up with the various other metals, I can choose where I want to put it. So if there are spots on him that I don't want to get hit with the brighter metals, I just have to try and avoid them as I'm painting, right? But for everywhere else, I want to make sure he's going to have a nice, bright metallic color coming through. Okay, so that is gunmetal. The next thing I'm going to do is go up to chainmail silver, and I'm going to take a look at the model one more time to see where I need to go to chainmail silver. And actually, yeah, no, that's fine. I think chainmail silver is going to get, where is it going to get hit? I think maybe the belt buckle. Oh, I probably ought to do those little spots on his back too, because that cloak, even though it is black, it definitely will have some nice gunmetal going on. Now I'm gonna have to paint that over entirely. I didn't even hit that. That's fine. But yeah, let's go up to chainmail silver with his Guandao and with his pickaxe and maybe the little orb in his hand. I think it deserves to have one more highlight. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. And then for the rest of his body, since it's a considerably lighter metal, we're going to bring that all the way up to like pure silver. And hopefully that will create a really nice looking highlight on the guy. So this is going to go even brighter. And you can actually even see it getting brighter as I'm doing this, which is very encouraging. Hit some of the edges with it. Then with it going down, hit some of the edges with it. Hit some of the edges with it. And kind of there we go. You can hit over the edges with this thing, make it look nice and bright and shiny. Like that, and I think I can hit the belt buckle. Kind of hit the belt buckle. This is also going to get a lot of shading, so hopefully that will help alongside it. I don't really need all that chainmail silver. I might have given myself too much, so we'll grind that out. Mix it in over there. Use it again to kind of wash some of that out. And I think, well, actually the entire thing should be getting chainmail silver, because this is eventually going to go all the way up to actual silver. It's just that I'm stopping at chainmail silver for the implements in his hands or his belt buckle. So we're going to go ahead and continue pouring on the chainmail silver elsewhere to really bring the brightness up on him and hopefully sell that he's actually going to end up being a bright silver golem instead of, you know, a very dark machine. So everywhere is getting this extra bright highlight. The chainmail silver. Okay. Now I'm going to go all the way up to straight silver, which is that right there. Hopefully, if I did this right, there's going to be enough color discrepancy that it'll be noticeable. This is going to go primarily on his skin. That would be his main body, his main chassis. And yeah, this is almost immediately noticeable on him. It's like the brightest color. So that's definitely a good thing. And it's going to have to go everywhere, especially because of the light that orb is kind of giving off. Across the chest too. It's there, across his face. And I think something I might end up doing, actually, since he is this metallic color, is I might end up covering him in gnome oil and then giving him a second pass, because right now the color shift is very, very subtle. I don't want him to end up looking too dark still. So I might darken him down with the gnome oil and then hit him again with this silver to really bring it out on him. Go ahead and give his face another pass too. Now I'll be honest, Station Forge, or not Station Forge, Hero Forge does a tremendous job with their models. This is a really neat looking guy. Yeah, I think that actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and wash this off, I suppose. Get some of the schmuckus and whatnot off of this dry brush. Yep, looks like I got most of it. I'll mix that in here. Now I'm just going to put the dry brush off to the side. Debating, should he get a wash? I don't think he should get a wash. I'm going to go ahead and take a closer look at him one more time. Looks like he's wearing dark brown leather gloves, has a lot of dark brown leather trim, but he's also got some brownish bronze going on for some of the joints on him. And I think for this part, that's where I'm going to use the detail dry brush, which is this one, to try and be precise with some more of my dry brushing. So I'm going to use this color, bright bronze. And I think I might even be squirrely, and I might mix it in a little bit with some brighter brown to see what kind of color I can pull out of it. Because it looks to me like they had just kind of a dull brown going on there. And actually, you know what? I think this might be a case where the Army Painter brown might actually be a better color for this. Yeah, Army Painter leather brown. We'll give that a shot. Mix that in a little bit with it. See how this turns out. Okay, give me a second. So I give this a little bit of a mix. This bronze comes off as a little bit reddish, and the actual color on there doesn't seem to be very red. So let's give this a shot, see how this will go. Okay, that looks like it'll be fine. Okay, mix you together, see what we get. We get a very, I don't want to call it ugly, but definitely a dulled down brown. I actually think I could have gone darker with that. So let's go ahead and hit this guy in some of the parts where he's, well, you know what'll break this down? What will make this darker, I think, will actually be the Agrax Earthshade when I eventually put it on him. So I'm going to have to be very careful here. He's got a lot of spots that can use this. I really don't want it to smudge and get into other spots of the model. The way he's designed, it seems to be kind of like a brown endoskeleton made out of a bronze of some kind. And then, you know, the rest of the armature in here is that silver. Okay, so he doesn't actually have a whole lot of spots. His neck, I think, is the last part that I really need to get, and the back elbow. So hopefully this will be an easy get, and it'll be further darkened by the Agrax Earth shade when I bring that out. Now, admittedly, I'm being a little fast and loose because this doesn't need a whole lot of very fine protection, a whole lot of very fine work, because a lot of it will end up being covered up later. Now, let's see. Yeah, that's brown. So we're going to go ahead, hit that a little bit, hit that a little bit. What I probably can do, actually, is on some of the harder to reach spots, I can finagle my way in there with a different brush. But I do think that turned out fine. I can go back here. Go ahead and take this brush and go see if I can get it up there. Now, I've had a lot of fun putting these guys together because they've each used very different skills. I tried to go much more high level with my technique on the first model because it seemed like with that one there were a lot of places where blending and highlighting could be done, but this one that's a lot less the case. So I've been more attempting to use wider dry brush details to see if I can get similar results on a much broader model. Let's touch that up a little bit. That's fine. Highlight back over to see if we can cover that up. Yeah, that should be okay. Okay, the next thing is stop knocking over stuff. Okay, so now let's go into the leather. Let's get away from the metallics. Let's see what I can do with the leather involved. This guy, which I think is a dark leathery brown, which is perfect. Definitely mess with that. Actually, it looks like he's got some gold, A, some gold trim, and then B, he's got some gold cuffs on. So I think I can go up to a fairly bright gold, to glorious gold. We'll see what we can do with that real quick before we move on. Yeah, I think glorious gold will be bright enough. If I need to, I'll go one step higher. But let's stop there for now. See what kind of fun I can have with this. The dry brush, it looks like it's going to be good. So we're going to go ahead, kind of the same thing all over. Getting these golden shackles. And the spots that I can't get, those are unfortunately, actually, it's just bad. They're unfortunately spots that I just can't get. Morning, Red. For me, it's not quite morning. It's 8 p.m. So, glad to see you up, though. How you doing? No Warham stuff today. I'm frantically trying to get a mission done that I was given about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I feel bad that I haven't gotten it back to the customer, who is a friend. So I kind of want to get this done as quickly as possible, which means I've got to dedicate some time to it today. Thankfully, the last bit seems to be a lot more dry brushing because he's a lot more of metallics and the like than the previous ones, so I have plenty of time to just kind of hit him with the broad strokes and then fill in the details later, which is exceedingly pleasant for me. Okay, those are the only real gold bits on it. Well, actually, no, this is technically a gold bit too. I'll go ahead and hit that real quick. I think all the parts on this guy that are hitting these metallic paints are going to get dulled down with a wash later. So right now, I'm playing a little more fast and loose with how I'm painting them. Oh yeah, and he's got the gold bit gone down. Just finished streaming, took my meds, so starting to feel sleepy. That's fair. I hope that my stream is able to help you, fall asleep. I haven't had as much time to stream recently because it's the end of the year and I'm finding myself busier, at the end of the school year at least, and I'm finding myself a little busier than I expected and a little more exhausted. The air conditioning unit at our school conked out, so we're now teaching the kids in 80 degrees, 85, 86 degree Fahrenheit sweat boxes and I ended up having to buy a fan and open a window and just kind of keep class going as best as I can. And I thank my lucky stars that the kids like me well enough. I appreciate it. I'm being more self-deprecating than anything. But yeah, we basically found out that oh, they're up my brain. Well, we're happy that the kids like us well enough that they're not rebelling. They're just kind of miserable and tired, which is completely understandable given that the classrooms are now, like I said, 80 some odd degrees. So we're making it work. We're trying to get through it, but it's definitely not the funnerest thing in the world. Okay, so the back part of him, back cloak, which I think is what I'm going to do next, is kind of a black, but it also has some dry brushed trim on it, which should be fine. I don't think he wants it to be metallic. He's not getting it metallic. So we're just going to go ahead and be really, really sloppy here, and I'm just going to dry brush this shit on. Because I honestly don't feel like there needs to be a whole lot of detail work on a giant cloak. So that's how this is going. And all these other spots are going to get a metallic dry brush anyway, so I'm not too worried about the spillage. There we go. Let's see if I can hit this last one. Yes, very good. And I think I'll just detail brush the rest of that in. Like I said earlier, I'm kind of taking a decent amount of shortcuts on this because this person's been waiting for these models for far too long as far as I'm concerned. So I'm just going to try and use some tactics that don't reduce the quality of the model, but definitely get it through the production line a little quicker. Get that a little bit more, just a little bit more, a little bit more. And again, this is going to get a heavy wash later, so it's going to be okay. But yeah, I'm hoping that as soon as I finish these guys, I can kind of return to doing Warhand stuff. I still have the Puma that needs to be finished up. I don't want to say I've been hesitant to dry brush those, but I kind of am at a loss of what to do next. They basically look finished, but I know for a fact they're not. I still need to finish doing the details on Griffin Simmons, and I need to finish doing some of the smaller details on the character. So let's see, what is going on here? Oh, he's got, this is black, and this is black. It's just kind of punched over because of his stance. Okay, and the rest of this, well, that part is, oh, it's because it's a strap. Okay, that part's supposed to be like the leather brown, because there's supposed to be a strap underneath him, and the rest of that is kind of like a cottony gray. It's perfectly fine. I can actually get that cottony gray by mixing in some white with the black that I was just using. So I think I'm speaking with my mate in Australia. As a teacher, he's in an altercation with a year 9, apparently. Apparently his mate dared him to run up behind and kick him in his happy sack. Well, that's not fun. Hopefully he was able to press charges or something, because that's going a bit above and beyond the pale there. That is one thing I do appreciate, is that our students very rarely, if ever, feel the need to assault a teacher, and it's not something that typically happens. A year 9 would put him at what age? Because I think school starts the same basically everywhere, so when I think of year 9, I think of a 9th grader, which would put him at about 14, 15 years old, which is about the age where they're still dumb and impulsive enough to do something like that, but also big enough that would really have sucked. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this back down to a neutral gray, and I can build up from that neutral gray. I gotta say, I feel pretty lucky that since I've done all of the martial arts and I did the boxing and I did everything else, and the kids are aware of it, they're very unwilling to try and be aggressive. Is it one of these schools if the parents are told they don't care? Yeah, that kind of sounds like ours. The only time they care is if they think they can sue and get some money out of it, which doesn't happen as often. And we have a principal that's a little more fearless about it because she's been teaching in the school for years and years and years, so she does not fear the parents at the school. It's been really nice. Because for the longest time we've had principals and administration that were too scared of admin and of the repercussions that they've basically always sided with the parents no matter what. And it's really, really defangs you in terms of what you can do as a teacher there. Because if the students know they can get away with murder, then they'll very willingly get away with murder. But yeah, no, the only time that some of those kind of parents will step in is when they realize that they've got to start taking responsibility, and then suddenly they'll find a way to blame the school, right? Which, I don't want to, lambast all parents like that. There are plenty of awesome parents out there that are pulling, triple duty to make sure that their kids are well taken care of and raised right. But there's always that one or two dipsticks that are just awful. And I feel bad when for the school district and for the schools where obviously that ratio is a little higher or a lot higher. Because it's like, what do you do at that point? And I don't have the answers. And apparently most of the governments don't have the answers because pretty much everyone is struggling with these kind of problems, just in different degrees. And there's a whole bunch of other factors that you take into consideration. It creates a whole lot of that mess going on. Because you think one has the answer, and then it's like, no, they really don't have the answer. They just happen to be in a good community or whatever. Like, well, why are they in a good community? Well, in this community, they have this, that, and that. But is that really the case? Is it not because they have this, that, and that? And it just becomes one of those weird, vicious cycles where there's no right answer and everyone gets really mad about it. So I just kind of put my head down and try and do what I can in my little corner of the educational sphere. Do my job, teach a kid, get paid, that kind of thing. Go home, paint minis. Go home and paint minis is the important part. And yeah, that neutral gray looks infinitely better than that smudgy whatever mess that I had going on there. And I'm gonna further do this by really hitting it with a good solid layer, smaller brush. So hopefully this will end up looking really solid when it's all done. One of the biggest problems that I consistently have with painting minis like this is that I always worry that since they're bigger minis, the bigger details are going to have much more obvious failures and technical issues with them. But at the same time, I start double guessing myself, and then I keep going over them even before they dry, and then the paint job just ends up looking like a mess. But hopefully that won't be an issue this time around, because now that I've vocalized my shortcoming, I am going to work to not have it happen. Instead, I'm just going to paint this thing as carefully as I can. I'm going to have to go back over with the black, though. Do you have a department in the U.S. that goes around to every school and grades the school so they can make changes? Not really. Typically, I believe that we have, because of how federalized our system is, each school district kind of has its own jurisdiction. I believe that there is a central district for the state that certifies the schools and makes sure that they are having adequate yearly progress and a bunch of other things. And so when there is an issue, it's addressed, but it usually has to be like a major issue. Like a school a couple years ago got in a big cheating scandal with the standardized testing that we do yearly. and so the entire administration was sacked, and they had to get new administration in, and they supposedly turned the school around, and things are now much better. And the definition of better is very strange, because obviously they're not having cheating scandals anymore, but every student that we get that transfers from there talks about just how common the fights are. So I guess it's one of those one thing at a time things. They need to fix this one thing, so they deal with admin, and then they try and get new admin in that'll fix thing, and if it works, cool. If it doesn't, well, we'll go through a new one. And I mean, at my school, I think we've had 4 administrators since I became a teacher there. Just because, A, the job is hard, really hard, and B, most of the up until the most recent principal we've had, they've been out-of-towners who didn't really understand the culture of the school. And so the methods that they wanted to use to try and turn the school around didn't really do much. And I mean, in general, I think I'm lucky, because even though I'm in technically a city school, we're just good enough that we tend to pass all the adequate yearly progress stuff. I mean, like last year or so, all of our scores fell, but that was across the board because they were COVID kids, and the COVID generation didn't get a very solid basis in math, science, etc., since they really didn't make much of an effort to log in for various reasons and be taught virtually. Which, you know, sucked, but it was what it was, I guess. It's just something to anticipate. But yeah, no, I know that we get people from the district who come in and try and fix things, and I guess if the entire district is bad enough, that's when the state will start sending in people. And if the state is too inadequate at fixing it, then the federal government might intervene, but I've never heard of that happening. Okay. I think I have made these gaps, or these creases in here, not look like ass. Did I? Yeah, those look a little better. But yeah, I don't have all the answers for how to fix the schools and how to fix all these other problems. I just know that because of a combination of things, it's definitely become more difficult. Though I will say, despite how many kids can be genuinely awful, a vast majority of the kids that I teach are actually trying their hardest, and some of them just don't have the tools to succeed, and they're trying really damn hard regardless, and they're genuinely good kids. That's been the best part of it, is I have yet to lose faith in the students I teach. I have more issues with the situation surrounding the students I teach, if that makes sense. Okay, let's see. And I mean, that's kind of the worst part about it, is education of the youth should be like one of the things that we really focus on and really have down pat, but we clearly don't, or else we wouldn't be having some of the problems we have. But, you know, no one really knows the answer to that, I guess. I know I don't. And I know I don't want to get into administration, because that just sounds like an insanely unforgiving job that really doesn't allow me to do anything to help the kids that I want to help. I want to be in the trenches, helping them next to them, not telling a school that this is your goal and this is what we need to see. We have Ofsted. They recently gave a low grade to my eldest old primary school, and a couple teachers and the headmaster were sacked. I wonder what would have caused that. I mean, it's good to see that there's some accountability there, but I'm curious as to what would cause, what degree of ineptitude would have caused a principal and a couple of staff to be sacked. Though admittedly, I also don't believe that, that they should be let on indefinitely. If they're not doing their job right, then they need to be let go. Unfortunately, I don't know much about the politics of the city I'm in because I moved here. It's weird to say I moved here 10 years ago, but I haven't really paid attention to the politics of the city and the county because I was so nervous about keeping and maintaining my job. I got really self-absorbed into that. But I didn't realize how much of a good old boy town Roanoke was because I had read that we voted fairly democratically, which is, whatever. And, the districts and whatnot all kind of are blue and Democrat in our ways. But it's like a really old traditional version of it. Teaching was poor, dinners were inadequate, lack of knowledge of bullying. Dinners were inadequate? You guys serve dinners to your kids at your schools? That's pretty neat. We don't do that. I mean, part of the reason why we kept the school open during the pandemic and whatnot, and part of the reason why we don't take very many snow days or whatever, is very specifically because we want to be able to feed them. But yeah, I'm glad to know that there's some kind of oversight like that will make immediate effective change to try and fix the situation. So at the very least, unless there's some kind of backdoor dealing going on, that if a teacher and an administrator is really not doing their job, then they get yeeted. The way our education system works here does not have that kind of oversight. In a lot of ways, I feel like I'd be one of the teachers. They have a choice of depending on if parents are on low income. Yeah, we don't get that. Doesn't matter if the kids are on low income or not. They're out of the building by 4:35 p.m. unless they have extracurricular activities, and then they go home around 6 or whatever. And no, there's no dinner meals for the kids. I think the only time that there's an exception to that is if they're part of an athletic team, like specifically football, and they have a game that night. They may feed them like spaghetti or something, which is not very good because school cafeteria food is what's the word I'm looking for? Is budgeted out to the lowest bidder. So like we had a school food distributor that was managed by Magic Johnson, the NBA, the basketball player, and to a T, every one of the kids hated it. But it was the cheapest option, so that's what they got. Which really sucked because having kids who are cranky because they're hungry is definitely not the greatest way to, we call it lunch. Yeah, we call it lunch. Okay. But yeah, I'm sorry, we got the breakfast, lunch, dinner thing going on. I don't remember what they call it across the pond. But yeah, no, that kind of is left up to the school. Unless they find out that there's like roaches in the food or something, then generally schools are left to their own decision making on who they're going to contract out. Well, the district is. Because the district has a board of directors and they have a superintendent and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we have free and reduced lunch for that. Breakfast, dinner, and tea. Okay, that's fair. Not the naming conventions I would have guessed, but who am I to argue? Who am I to say? I don't know. I don't know much about that. Okay, let's go ahead and hit this metal bit a little bit better. Because hopefully this will all get kind of beaten down once I hit it with a wash, which is the plan. I don't know, I feel like in a lot of ways Americans are just purposely doing things wrong out of spite. Or doing things different out of spite, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, that a little bit more. That looks like it'll be fine. What else? Because I feel like there are parts of this that don't... Okay, there it is. Let's say I feel like there's parts of this that don't quite look right. And I found them. There we go. There we go. Can I hit this okay, or am I about to make a fool of myself? Because painting over black sucks. Nope, that turned out pretty okay. Okay, that's not a bad place to start, I think. Yeah, I've got enough in here to cover up some bits and bobs. And then I'll paint back over that in a second with the bronze. With the bronze mix that I made. Actually, I'm going to blow dry get this. I'll be right back. I ran out of my asthma medication last weekend, and I haven't taken it for a while. And at one point, I got it back, but my wife suggested I stop trying because the pulmonologist suggested that I may not need it all the time, and I should go a couple days without it to see if maybe my asthma kind of self-corrected. So I haven't taken my my inhaler for about a week now, and today I definitely felt it. And so tomorrow, I am going back on my dang inhaler. Because doing nothing shouldn't cause me to breathe hard. Here I am. Okay, I think I like how this is turning out. The next thing that I need is a dark brown. I need a dark leather brown. So I'm going to take... Where am I dark brown at? I'm going to take my charred brown, which I think I need to buy another bottle of. I go ahead and mix it in with the black that I was using, and use it to paint his gloves. And probably the leather around his... Actually, let's see, what do I need this for? I need to look at the bigger... Okay, so he's wearing kind of a gray-green satchel. So it's the belt buckle, the wrist or the armband, gloves, and that's it. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. I can do that. Does pollen affect it? I think so. I guess so. Because I do have really bad allergies, but I've been taking Zyrtec for a while, and that seems to be doing a number on it, preventing it from getting too bad. So at this point, I'm just really not sure what the problem is. I do know that if I'm taking the Zyrtec daily and I'm taking my inhaler daily, then I'd feel great. I feel better than I felt in a long time, because I suppose I've been walking around with asthma longer than I thought I was, and I was just being an idiot and sucking it up instead of, you know, going to a doctor about the breathing issues. Because, like I said before, I box, and I was at a point where if I strained myself too hard in boxing, I'd start wheezing, and I thought maybe that was just because I was getting fat and out of shape. But as it turns out, no, it's because my lungs were tightening since I had asthma that was undiagnosed. Because I've started training again, and I've realized that my body is giving out faster than my lungs. And while that is slightly flattering, it's also a little frustrating realizing that I've basically been handicapping myself for like the past 2 years with my boxing and with my overall health. They stopped allowing Zyrtec over there. Maybe I should stop taking it, because if another country isn't allowing the import of it, then it's probably not that good for you. Just like you guys do with our meat, because our meat is disgusting. But yeah, I've been taking Zyrtec pretty regularly for about 1.5 years now, and it's not perfect. What we've kind of realized is that the major cause of my sinus issues is actually barometric pressure. When the temperature changes and it gets very cold and very wet, that's when my body decides it's time for everything to hurt. I get a horrible headache. I start having allergy issues where my sinuses will just not relax. Can't breathe, can't see, can't think. It's all of that fun rigmarole. And generally after a day or so I feel better, but for that day or so I am absolutely miserable. Oh, I need a lot more black than that. Okay. But yeah, the Zyrtec seems to work okay for the other mild pollen issues. And the Breo ellipta, which is the name of the inhaler I'm taking, seems to be helping with the breathing issues and the chest tightness. So, can't complain too much about any of that. Especially after how bad I was doing in February, where I wasn't able to get online, and when I did, I was basically a wheezing mess. So that's good. He's got this other chonky armband on that I can't really reach because it's tucked in under his Guandao, but I'm gonna give it the old college try. And actually, now that I think about it, is his his Guandao is a darker color, I believe. But what about his pickaxe? A lighter color. Pickaxe is a slightly darker red. The Guandao is almost like a teal khaki. But the armbands and the chest wrap I've already done. Put that in there. Get that on there to really drive home the darkness of that leather. Next thing is his belt. So, time to get the belt on here. And I'm going to try and hit it where I can, but he's now getting too far away. Going to head off, feeling drowsy. Have a good rest, okay? You deserve it. Get a good night's sleep. Thank you for the well wishes. I'm just kind of streaming because I got nothing else to do. My wife is upstairs running a D&D campaign with her friends. I'm kind of D&D'd out, so I'm just chilling down here, getting a commission done, hoping against hope that I do a good enough job. Well, not against hope. I know I'm going to do a good enough job. I'm Ben Repaints. I'm not going to talk down about myself on my own stream that much. What I am going to do is have this weird leather strap poking through the cape, because that's what the model needs. Okay. So, let's see what else. The gloves are good, the armbands are good. I eventually need to color that in, which is going to be, I will use the word fun. Oh, I suppose I can go ahead, hit this stuff. Because the dry brush was exceptionally sloppy and didn't actually do a very good job. Now that I've got this little brush, I can go ahead and hit those spots. And then get back out. Whoops. Get back out. I suppose the gunmetal, because it's the darkest, mix the gunmetal back up and put it over some of the spots that I spilled. Because I've got this horrible staining going on right now, and it's definitely way too dark. Way too light, whatever you call it. So that's going to be a problem. Is it? Get rid of all of that. How are the birds tweeting outside right now? It's like it's almost 9 o'clock. That's 8:31. Okay, so hopefully that'll look okay. And next, I suppose, I'm going to go ahead and just use the base charred brown. Nah, maybe I'm going to mix the charred brown a little bit with the buff. I really don't need to go that dark again. So now I can go the opposite way. I can go lighter and then eventually go lighter to get the pole arm pull. Then I think I'm actually going to have to remix some gold. Is this going to be too light? Yeah, that's too light. Okay. On the other end, more. And now, okay, that should work, I think. Give me a second. It's a little darker than I want, or a little lighter than I want, but I think what I can do is just go back over it. the blade. That's a rope, so that'll be an easy job. That's all rope. I don't really want to hit that. Now let's mix it in even lighter. Put it on. One of my favorite polearm weapons, one of my favorite weapons of all time. I had a moment when I was sparring with a friend who was using a greatsword that he was fairly proficient in. I used a Joe staff, which isn't even a full guandao, it's like a walking stick in size. And he got to try and spar me with that thing, and after about 2.5 minutes he went, I never want to fight that thing again. Because apparently a small stabby implement is an absolute bear to deal with a much longer weapon. Or with a much bigger, more awkward weapon. And it just further cemented my love for polearms and for staves. Because you never feel as cool as you do when you have a stave. Though I will say, on a slightly irrelevant note to the staving, I watched Sanctuary over the last few weeks, and if you don't, or the last few days, and if you don't know what Sanctuary is, it's a Netflix show about a ne'er-do-well. I love that word, ne'er-do-well. Basically a hooligan who was like a judo champion as a kid, and a sumo trainer, I don't remember the names, I'm sorry, my terminology is really bad, sees him at a tournament and sees how good he is, and suggests to him that he get into sumo, and that it pays really well. And the kid is looking for some kind of way out of poverty, because unfortunately for him, his father screwed up big time, and he ended up in crippling poverty. And it ruined the family, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And so he's been living kind of as a hooligan, trying to make enough money to pay off his dad's debts and reopen the sushi shop that he owned. But it's obviously very slow going. So he joins the sumo stable, but he's got all of this like hooligan energy. He doesn't care about the rules. He's very obviously thuggish. And the show's about like his struggle to adapt to this environment and kind of his growth. And of course, since it's a TV show, it's got all sorts of like drama and intrigue going on and politicking going on in the sumo stable itself and in the sumo world itself. And I think at that point it's drawing off of some real world examples from like the match fixing issues that were happening and the just stories of abuse in the dojos, which I believe are the dojos, the sumo schools. Someone's gonna come in here and just absolutely eviscerate me for my lack of knowledge, and that's fair. I'm not trying to claim that I know all this stuff, but I've always been something of a fan of sumo. I don't want to say that I was ever a huge fan, but I thought it was a really, really cool martial art as a kid. And I remember seeing a documentary late one night about it on late night television, and all it did was make me love it more. The whole idea of sumo and the tradition behind it, and just like how the sport functions, I think it's super neat, and it really is upsetting to know how corrupt it was at one point and what kind of bad image that puts on the sport. But you know, I don't have control over that. All I have control over is my enjoyment of the pure parts of it, which I enjoy greatly. So this show does a great job with its characterization. All of the people in it have very strong personalities and motivations. And unfortunately, it ends on the cliffhanger, on a ridiculous cliffhanger that made me very upset, because the main character finally kind of had his aha moment and was becoming better and was gaining the respect of his gym mates and all the things that you hope for in a good sports drama. And he was going to redeem himself with a big match against someone who had severely humbled him earlier in the story. And then it cuts to black because the episode's over. And it's like, dang, I gotta wait potentially another year or two until they make another season, because I don't want to rush them, But at the same time, they might never make another season because it may not do well, right? And so I'm a little upset about that because I would love to see that show do well. And I'm not going to try and claim that it's going to make $1 million or it's going to be like well received. It may not be. People may not love it, but I had immense pleasure in watching it. And I just thought it was the bee's knees. I really, really enjoyed watching that show. It reminded me how much I love sumo. And while I very much disagree with and disapprove of the training tactics they used and just kind of the bullying and, in a lot of degrees, the careless brutality, the show was fascinating to watch. And it was well shot. It had some really great laugh-out-loud moments. It had some really gross moments. It had some terrifying moments. But it was, overall, it was a pretty darn good show. And I really, really hope that it gets another season. Now, this guy is coming along real nice real quickly. Okay, so that's more of a yellow. So I can... It's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of that. And we're just going to put you over that because it's like a pale wrapping. Perfect. So yeah, I want more of it. I want to see more of it. There was one complaint that I did have for it, for anyone who is interested at all. And that was primarily that the dojo that the main character goes to is shown as like a traditional hard as nails one, and everyone seems to know what they're doing and everyone seems to be fine, but as they start actually competing, we find out that they're all pretty bad at it. And that was a little disappointing because it's like we spent all this time watching these guys be better than him and bully him around and basically treat him like crap because of how little respect he has for the sport. And it's like, fine, I get that. It's like if the guy's being a jackass then and knows what he's getting into, then that's how it's got to be, especially if that's the tradition. But then we see that they're not very good. Like I believe, with the exception of their veteran, who goes through his own little story arc, they're all pretty bad at sumo. And so when they go to have their first matches, we see each of them get beaten and embarrassed pretty hard. And it takes him refocusing and him realizing that this is what he's got to do. He's got to respect the art. He's got to train hard. He's got to do all these things that he was unwilling to do. It takes him doing that and kind of pulling the rest of him along with him for them to finally become, like, good and effective. And I take umbrage with that because their teacher is supposed to be one of, all sumo teachers, all sumo coaches are former sumo, I'm pretty sure. And, like, in his case, the teacher is, again, he's one of the most well-respected sumo in the industry. And I would figure, if he's as good as his reputation suggests, then why is it taking this other dipstick coming into his doyu and lighting a fire under their asses? Why aren't they doing this themselves? Why isn't the coach doing this himself? And it kind of feels that way throughout the first part of the series, as the coach is supposed to be very good at what he does. And he kind of is really standoffish and doesn't offer much in the way of, like, instruction other than an occasional bend deeper, bend your knees deeper, sink lower, to the guys who are following the tradition and are following what they're supposed to be doing loyally. So that just hit me wrong, and it always does hit me wrong. I hate the idea that there is, and I know it's done for dramatic effect, but I always dislike the idea that a professional school of anything, a professional club, professional school, is going about their business, but they're absolutely awful until that one special dude with their one special attitude comes in and then kicks their butts the right way, and suddenly they're like winning championships or whatever. And that's kind of what happens with this show, is that the character, his name is Enno, he's a jackass who is naturally talented because of his build and because of his judo background, but he's not quite good enough, and once he starts trying to be good enough, that's when everyone else decides, oh, I better train harder and train like he is to be better. Like, what have you been doing? You guys are supposed to have grown up in this. So that rubbed me the wrong way, and it was kind of frustrating to watch. But I understand why they did it, because they're trying to drive home that, you know, the fierce dedication and whatnot that he shows. This is not going to work. This brush is too effed up. And like the drastic change in character and how it can transform everything. But I don't like that trope. I feel like it's old, it's overused, it kind of trivializes what the other people were doing there before he showed up. You know, just one of those things. But that's, like I said, that's purely my opinion. If you watched it and you thought differently and you loved it, and that wasn't a point of contention, well then I'm glad that you loved it, because I want more of that show. I want to start training in sumo, to be honest. I'd like to find a place where I can start doing the Shiko and all the other cool stuff. This guy is turning out really good for what's essentially not a lot of effort. Once I kind of got him in his base coat, he really kind of came together quickly. Okay, so just this bit. And so, yeah, I love the show. I thought it was well done. I've heard that it does a very accurate depiction of sumo. And while obviously his antics go beyond the pale quite often in the show, because there are moments where he's absolutely disregarding the bows and the procedures and the decorum. He's like screaming into the camera and flicking it off, and, you know, just doing awful things that would bring a lot of widespread negative attention to the sport. That's all for the drama. The actual scenes of him doing the sumo and him doing the training are kind of, what's the word I want to use? They're kind of like enrapturing to watch. I really enjoyed those parts of it. But I've always been interested in how the soup is made. You know what I mean? I've always loved seeing, you know, the procedure of how it's all put together. I love seeing how it's made. And so, for a lot of people, sumo is just two fat guys running into each other and trying to knock each other out of a ring. And while, yes, that is kind of the case, there's a whole lot of training, there's a whole lot of nuance, there's a whole lot of martial art in that tradition. And so to see it portrayed so incredibly well, just absolutely made my day. And I think, unfortunately, I'm a little bit face-blind when it comes to East Asians, because I grew up in the United States, and even though I myself am Korean, obviously without having that kind of exposure, I struggled a bit with identifying who was who for the longest time in the show. And after about an episode or two, when everything started sinking, I was able to enjoy it more fully, but that meant that I missed like an episode and a half or 2 episodes of characterization and moments that were probably more impactful to someone who was more clearly able to recognize who was who in the first couple of episodes. So I want to go back and I want to rewatch it, and I really want to like see what bits and bobs I missed from the beginning of it. Okay. So I'm going to mix up this green, and I'm going to mix it up with like a black, and I think this is supposed to be, this is Gris Denso, this is heavy gray, but it comes out looking more like, I don't know, a green? It actually reminds me of Death Guard green, but not quite as bright. So what I'm going to do with it is forget where it came from. Where'd you come from? Right there, I suppose. And I'm going to mix it in with a little bit of gray. And actually, no, probably a little bit of black, and see what that comes up with. If I don't like that, I'll probably add some gray. But from what it looks like, his loincloth, or his shroud, or whatever you want to call it, his waistcloth, is definitely more of like a mixed gray color than anything else. So we're going to see if I can replicate that between these two colors. Actually, that's looking pretty good. So I can do this, and I can add some white in there, or some lighter gray, to turn this back into a brighter version of itself, and they'll be good. This is going to work out just fine. Hopefully I used the bad brush. It looks like I used the bad brush. I don't know. Being an adult male, growing up in the United States, I've always been interested in martial arts things. And unfortunately, for the longest time, the representation of martial arts in the West was not very good, or it was all heavily based through Yen Wo-ping's work in, like, The Matrix. And that's fine and all. I appreciate that for what it is, but I guess my biggest issue with it is that I've seen it all already because I watched a lot of the old 1980s Shaw Brothers and Golden Harvest Kung Fu movies with, like, Sammo Hung and Jackie Chan. So, like, pretty much a lot of the stuff that I saw when I finally watched bits and bobs of The Matrix and bits and bobs of some of his other work is it looked like a lot of reusing of things that he did in the old Golden Harvest and Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung stuff, but with considerably less talented martial artists. And I don't want that to be a knock on the actors and actresses who did it, because they clearly trained hard to do it. It's just, they obviously, because they don't have the same breadth and depth of training, it wasn't as smooth, it wasn't as clean, it wasn't as graceful. And so I always felt like I was kind of watching a cheap knockoff of a better thing, you know? So, getting to see other examples of East Asian martial arts and just martial arts in general, that's always been a big deal to me. And sumo being one, like I said, I've been interested in since I was a wee little kid. That was special. So I enjoyed the show, and I was pleasantly surprised. I really didn't want to show it to my wife because she hates the kind of show where the asshole is redeemed, or not redeemed, but he's vindicated, where he's like a raging jerk, but people are like, oh, don't be mean to him. He had a bad blah blah blah, and then suddenly that makes it better, even though the character themselves never change. Which I get. That's an incredibly frustrating type of show that was prevalent in the early 90s as a way to try and build empathy, but instead it just kind of excused shittiness. And that's what the beginning of the show was for a lot of it. It was a lot of the character Enno being an absolute douchebag, and for the first couple of episodes it's just watching him be horrible and watching people be upset that he's horrible. And that wasn't particularly fun to watch, but I stuck it out because I was just interested in the sumo. And thankfully, the tide started shifting a couple of episodes in as he became an increasingly sympathetic character. So that was definitely very relieving to see, because I did not want to sit through 8 episodes of that character being awful and then being rewarded for being awful, which I don't think they would have made a show about that. There's one specific bit that I found to be very funny and also very nightmarish and punishing at the same time, and it's part of the bit that really kind of makes him into an incredible, like, makes him more of a sympathetic character. It makes him more of a someone you can get behind and root, is that he ends up fighting this absolute monster of a lower class sumo who's basically like the Beast. He's essentially the character the Beast. He's huge, he's very childlike, but when he gets in the ring, he's so monstrously strong that no one can stand up to him. And they show this by, like, that initial collision that sumo do. People just bounce off of him, and then within like a move or two, he's done with them. And there's no struggle. There's no chance for struggle because he's just so overwhelmingly powerful and big that they just don't have a chance. And so, one of the other rival schools does not like Enno because he's who he is. And so they start doing some back alley dealing to try and get him off the stable. They want to humiliate him because of the way he's been behaving. So they finagle the card a little bit so that he has to fight this character, this monster. And he's obviously nervous about it because this guy has been shown to just dominate people. And he gets into the ring and he makes his initial charge, And at the beginning of the next episode, they have him as a part of the slap exchange. He hits the big monster guy right under the jaw and just cleans his clock, and the guy falls over unconscious. And he celebrates, and everything just feels a little bit off because you realize, wait a minute, wasn't the arena half empty a second ago? And you realize, yeah, it was. And then his girlfriend, who wasn't there, runs into the arena and like starts celebrating with him. And the entire time, the audience is getting this moment of, oh god, he's hallucinating this. This is not happening. He is entirely hallucinating this. This is going to be bad. And as he's celebrating, he just suddenly spurts a whole bunch of blood from his nose. He's like, wait a minute, what's going on? And he notices that he spurts a whole bunch of blood from his nose, and he looks down at it, and he realizes that he was just hit so hard by this other guy that he basically suffered an immediate concussion. And he looks up, and he sees the guy rearing back for another palm slap. And then he hits him again, and it's just brutal. It is absolutely brutal watching this character getting bludgeoned to death by a 450-pound athlete slamming his fist into his face over and over and over again. And he knocks out a couple of his teeth. I'm spoiling this for everyone. He rips off one of his ears just by slapping him. It's awful. And that causes Enno to really kind of look deep within himself and think, who am I? What am I? What am I doing here? And then we can begin his redemption arc. But this also takes place, I think, halfway through the season. So you've got to kind of bear with him being awful for the first half of the season so that you can enjoy his revival and his renewal as a character in the second half of the season. And I think I read a review that was like, yeah, they just kind of stopped with some of the story arcs, and I gotta disagree. No, they didn't. They did a great job closing off some of the story arcs, and I don't know, I really like the show. I'm sorry if I spoiled it for you guys, well, part of it. I still suggest you go see it because it's the journey, not the destination. It's really good. And I would hate for someone to not watch it just because they were like, oh, well, that's sumo. I don't care about sumo. If you like good character drama, you should watch it because it's pretty good character drama. It's just all surrounding sumo. But I also am biased because I like sumo, so I don't know. I enjoyed it. I hope if you decide to watch it, you do too. Okay. Let's see. I need another thing. Because I'm going to be painting the treasure chest. I'm going to use Agrak's Earthshade to get that nice brown wash effect. And I think I'm going to do the same thing to him gloves. Get that nice brown wash effect. If I'm doing that, I'll be able to do that to belt. Let's put 2. And potentially right here. Now I will say, I probably ought to also do gnome oil on his belt buckle. There we go. That's definitely bringing out some more of the shadows in it. Okay, that's what I want. Now, unfortunately, that's as far as I can go with him today before this stuff dries off, but I gotta admit, I think he's coming along pretty okay. Let's see, we're gonna build this up, and obviously, he's not looking exactly the same, but I think I got pretty close in a lot of aspects. Let's see, the next one is going to be, yep. And now I just need to go ahead and hit him with the blue object source lighting. And hopefully this will all still look okay. And I also got to draw his eyes on. That's going to be fine. So yeah, I'm going to go put him aside. It's about 9 o'clock. I want to keep painting. I think actually that's pretty good. Goodness gracious. I got him done. I got my goal done for this stream. So I suppose I'll go ahead and sign off now. My voice is getting tired. I've been reading all day out loud to kids. So I will see you later. Thanks for joining me. I do appreciate it. I hope you guys had a good time. If you're watching this as a VOD later, cool. I appreciate it. But yeah, have a good rest of your evening, guys, and later. Bye-bye.